Twice a summer from 1923 until 1931, thunder would echo off the mountains in Tipton, Pennsylvania. This thunderous roar was coming from the Tipton Speedway, a wooden racetrack located on the site of the Dillon Industrial Park.
There was around 10 business people from Altoona who had went to Indianapolis, and they liked what they saw there and wanted to bring that back to Altoona. And there already was a little bit of a racetrack out where the Pleasant Valley Shopping Center is now. That used to be the driving park. And there was a gentleman in town that persuaded a lot of those race car drivers to come with him, down in Tipton. And so they hired an engineer by the name of Jack Prince, who had did a lot of these bowl tracks. He had first got started in doing it with bicycles. And so they commissioned him to do it. And at the time, they bought the ground, did the buildings, did the grandstands and the track. And it was $300,000. And that was in 1923.
The track was made up of 4 million board feet of lumber. There were over 300 carpenters involved in the construction of the track. The track itself was a 1¼ mile oval that was 60 feet wide and had 32 degrees of banking in the turns. The surface was made up of 2x4s laid on edge, with the ends being staggered like flooring.
You know, like Indianapolis was always called the brickyard, mainly because there was bricks, and I guess, going over something like that was probably kind of hard for the drivers. So they thought, with the lineup of all the boards, it would be a lot smoother ride. So that's, they didn't have concrete or macadam at that particular time.
Every Flag Day and every Labor Day, Tipton would come alive with the sound of race cars. The Flag Day race was the next race after the Indianapolis 500. Indy 500 winner Louis Meyer won on the boards of Tipton 3 times. Crowds of 50,000 to 75,000 people would converge on Tipton to see some of the most famous drivers of their time tackle the wooden bowl for 200 miles. These were truly men of courage.
They were probably back then the true sportsmen. In fact, a lot of them wore neckties. I can imagine the heat and everything like that. And all they had was like a cloth helmet. Some of them would have some kind of a goggles, but they wore ties. I can't even imagine that. But they were something else back then. They were the true sportsmen. A lot of them had they were wealthy too. They really didn't need this, but it was the idea of the sport, who could go fastest back then.
The speeds were amazing. In 1925, Peter DePaolo set a track record in qualifying. He circled the track at a speed of 132 miles an hour. He won the race that day with an average speed of 115 miles an hour. It was not only the speeds that would bring these racers to Tipton, Pennsylvania, but the prize money, $25,000 to be exact, with $9,000 going to the winner.
Had to be something else, because they had people coming in from all over, and they would be all dressed up like neckties and hats, suits and stuff. And then they had little events down there where they had, because right nearby was the airport. It was Stoltz Field then. And they would have people doing acrobatics, with the airplanes and stuff like that. In fact, one even crashed in the middle there. That was, I think, around 1926 that happened. But they had all kinds of stuff going on. They had bands on the track and playing different marches at the time. It probably was really something else at the time. And there was no fencing, no fence to wire. And as far as, in fact, even on that video that I had, people were, walking across the track and stuff like that. It was just, I don't know, I guess it was really something else. There was such a new thing that, there probably was all kind of excitement then.
The last race on the boards at the Speedway was run on September 7th, 1931. There were some races run on the dirt infield during the following years. Interestingly enough, one of those races was won by Joey Chitwood. Financial problems caused by the Depression eventually closed the Speedway, but Tipton can be proud of their memories of the Speedway. It brought a lot of excitement and thunder to central Pennsylvania.
It was 100 years ago in 1923 when the Altoona Speedway in Tipton was about to hold its inaugural race on its high-banked and wooden board surface.
Although the Speedway is now long gone, it remains a legacy. Our Jordan Mansberger brings us the story.
This is what racing in central Pennsylvania looks like in 2023. Here at the historic Bedford Speedway, dirt track racing is king, but the spectacle of auto racing looked quite different 100 years ago.
Racing fans, the fondest of memories is of Altoona's Mammoth Lumber Speedway, a gigantic circle big enough to enclose a flock of football fields.
It was George Long's idea to build the Altoona Speedway. His inspiration, the Indianapolis 500. He attended the Crown Jewel race in 1912.
The entire track was built from board. About 5 million foot of board was used. In fact, spectators that came by during the construction period thought they were building a skyscraper.
On this wondrous wooden saucer, the speed track terrors of the 20s dueled it out. They fought for position high above the ground on planks supported by a spider web of scaffolding.
After the Altoona Speedway held its inaugural race on September 3rd of 1923, they held 2 races per year, one on Flag Day and one on Labor Day.
Indianapolis always raced on Memorial Day, and that was a major race in the United States, still is. And the first major race after Indianapolis was in Altoona on Flag Day, June 14th.
Many drivers who raced at Indianapolis would also travel to Altoona to compete in its 250-mile races. The event drew a crowd of 100,000 fans.
Altoona helped put the roar into the Roaring 20s. You know, racing was in its infancy, but it was becoming sophisticated, at least mechanically. Safety-wise, not so much.
Racing on the wooden speedway presented unique dangers to its competitors. The track would splinter from the wear and tear of the cars, causing debris to fly through the air.
The only protection the drivers had was a leather cap and a pair of goggles.
The Altoona Speedway would become infamous for taking the lives of 3 Indianapolis 500 winners: Howard Wilcox in 1923, Joe Boyer in 1924, and Ray Keach in 1929.
It was just a tragedy in racing because of the speeds. The tires of the time couldn't take those kind of strains, and even the speeds.
Altoona's wooden track belonged to the fabulous Roaring 20s, and abandoned in 1930 to the ravages of rot, it died with the 20s.
By the end of the 1920s, the boards were starting to deteriorate, and then the Great Depression hit.
The Altoona Speedway held its last race on the wooden surface in 1931, which was the last board track championship held in the country. The Speedway transitioned into a dirt track in 1935 and then closed for good in 1940. Today, an industrial park is located at the site where the Altoona Speedway once stood. Even though the sights and sounds of the wooden speedway are long lost, its legacy lives on.
Any local history is worth preserving, and it's quite fascinating.
It's a great legacy of the 1920s and how people lived during the 1920s. It was really a remarkable time period for all these new advancements of the 20s that are known as the Roaring 20s.
In Altoona, I'm Jordan Mansberger, WTAJ News.
And to see more about the Altoona Speedway and its history, just visit our website, WTAJ.com.
How incredibly neat is that, Marty?
It was, you know, I mean, I don't know how many people know about it. I didn't know about it. No, obviously I wasn't. And let me get this out of the way. No, I wasn't there in 1923 when they started racing there. But it was pretty fascinating. And you think about the type of drivers that were coming here. These are people that ran at ran the Indy 500. So who knew?
Exactly. And we were talking, you know, there's something nostalgic about the radio announcers and the announcers in the background. You were doing your voice
you know,
as well.
when I started doing that, yes, there again, you know, they think
no,
that
but he was doing that in the studio for Christopher and I.
Well, because, you know, yes, that's the old, because you always talk like
Yes.
this. That's the way that those announcers of that time they did that on purpose because it showed that it was like, this is different than what we would be watching anywhere else. So
Exactly.
pretty cool.
We love it.